Three, two. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Pillars of Freedom podcast. And I know I say it every time, but it's no different. I'm bringing another friend of mine from the Oasis Elevate family, really the family here, to be able to share her story with you. And the reason I bring her on is because she has been an absolute shining example of what it means to literally take your life into do a 180 and really achieve a level of lifestyle freedom that I know all of us really want. And she's been a member of our community for what, probably only a year and a half, something like that.
No, since
No,
September, so not
so
even a
not
year.
even a year, ladies and gentlemen, not even a year. Okay, here's what I want you guys to keep in perspective. So we're gonna get into Blair's fantastic life here soon, but in less than a year, she's been able to take her life essentially from kind of like a almost like a really a dead end kind of social circle, a dead end career in many ways. Even though she was able to express herself, she never quite felt the fulfillment that she does now. And most people go to school 4 or 5 years to be able to really earn an income to make maybe 50, 60 grand a year and have 2 weeks of vacation. Blair has done in less than 1 year what most people could not do in 20, 30, or 40 years at their job, which is create a passive income and be able to create a global lifestyle. Now, we're going to get into more her story, but I just want to bring your attention to Blair for a minute because I know each and every one of you are looking for how do I actually unlock lifestyle freedom, time, income, and location, because that's really true wealth, guys. Being able to control your time, your income, and your wealth. And I wouldn't bring Blair on if I didn't think that her story, her discoveries, and really her wonderful personality couldn't help you get one step closer. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here is Miss Blair Williams. Thank you, Blair, for joining us tonight on the Pillars of Freedom podcast.
Thank you for having me, and hola from Mexico.
From Mexico, that's fantastic. Now it wasn't always Mexico. You were from originally North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So that is coastal country, right? That's the Atlantic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're more kind of like Pacific Gulf. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I wanna be able to share, especially like your transition into lifestyle freedom. But can you give our audience here a little bit of background? Like, who was Blair Williams a year ago? What were you experiencing, and how significant did that really kind of like that image of who you were and the life you were living start to play a role into your discovery of Oasis?
So 1 year ago, I was in a place in my life where I was, like you said, I hit a dead end. I was unhappy with the circumstances. I was unhappy with the people that I was hanging around. I was actually, if you want me to get really raw and real here, which that's who I am, I will get really raw and real. I was in a relationship with an alcoholic and hung out with, alcoholic friends. And so my concern at that time was partying. Like that's what I did. And I didn't really have very many goals because of that. And when the whole kind of COVID situation happened, it gave me a minute to, step back from work situations, step back and take a look at my life and say, like, I don't really like where things are going. I need to make a change. And so I started doing little things at first. I started really, of course, like changing my crowd that I hung out with. I got rid of the relationship. I got rid of those friends. And then I started surrounding myself.
Hey Blair, I just saw your screen freeze. Can you hear me?
Had Oh, did I cut out?
You cut out a little bit there.
Oh
So
no. What was
so
the
you
last thing you
started
heard?
so the last thing that I heard was you started to change who you were hanging out with after you described COVID hitting and
Yeah.
then transitioning into the next piece.
Yeah. So I started to change who I was hanging out with. And then I started making some other changes, practicing gratitude, just trying to keep a positive mindset. And then I was like, okay, something still doesn't feel right. Like I don't feel fulfilled. I really want to I really want to travel. I want to see the world. Like I want to be able to help my dad out because he's done so much for me. And I really don't know how to achieve these things. And so I started taking a look into the online world because I was like, well, COVID made everything go online. Like, why can't I do it? And so that's, I guess, around August is when, or September is when I discovered Oasis and really just went from there. Like it was the best decision I ever made. Like actually, because I was at a point where I was on a cliff. Like I knew I needed to make a change. I knew I needed to jump, but I needed somebody to talk me down off of that cliff and tell me it's okay. It's okay. I've been there. Just jump. It'll be fine. And so I pulled it together and I jumped and here I am. I hope that was the answer you're looking for.
I think it's a great start. And, it's so interesting that you mentioned it's like before you discovered Oasis, you were hanging out with a certain group of people, and in the pre-interview questionnaire, you mentioned that, you're essentially become like those who you hang around with. Um, I heard John Maxwell put it this way. He says I think he called it the law of averages, but he says you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If you were to take a snapshot of who you were hanging out with before you found Oasis, while you felt unfulfilled, um, how would you describe the eventual person you would become if you kept hanging out with those people?
In one word, ew. Yuck. So yeah, I definitely would have become worthless. I would have become somebody who hadn't accomplished anything in their life, and I probably would have gotten to 80 years old and had a lot of regrets about what I didn't get to do. I probably would have just partied harder and not gone anywhere, honestly.
Gotcha. And it's really interesting too, where it's like you look back at people who are at the end of their life, or you look at people who look back at the end of their life, and you might ask them questions like, do you have any regrets? And it was never about money per se. Oftentimes it was like, well, I feel like I fell short of my potential, right? You've probably heard that before. So do you feel like there was a sort of was there ever a point of like almost an existentialism where it was like, if I continue down this path, I know I'm not going to like who I become? Did you ever have a moment like that?
Of course. Of course, all the time. I had probably for about a year prior to realizing I needed to make a change in my life. I had a lot of moments where I was like, is this really like the path that I want to keep going down? Like, what am I going to be like if I keep like what is my life going to look like? Is my life even going to be good? Am I going to be happy? And the more and more that I continued down that path, I was like, okay, like clearly not. Clearly it needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really interesting is like as I learn more about you, even just like a month and a half ago, um, your prior occupation was a hairstylist, and you mentioned the questionnaire that you did that for 8 years. I mean, 8 years today seems probably like 20 or 30 years, back when maybe our parents were our age. And I feel like the ability to commit to something, there has to be something there, right? There has to be real substance. It sounded like you really enjoyed being a hairstylist, right?
I did. I did for a while, for about the first 6 years of doing it. And No, I lost my passion for it. I also got to the point where I felt tied down. I felt like I was under the demands of so many different people, including, bosses who wouldn't let me have time off. And I really craved that freedom. And, I did have a lot inside of me that was like, oh, like, you went to school for this. You paid 20 grand for this. Like, you need to go ahead and just do this because this is what you're supposed to do, which I think is what a lot of people go through. They go through that guilt. They're like, I've got $50,000 in college debt. I just need to continue on and do what I was meant to do. But then they go the rest of their life and they realize, oh, well, I'm not happy. Like, and then they have those regrets. So I think it's just, I hit a point where I was like, yeah, I don't want to be that person. I don't care about the money. I don't care that I spent 20 grand on this. I want to be happy. And so I just started putting myself first.
That's awesome. And it sounded like you started to kind of get on the path to really what sounds like happiness, or trying to practice happiness by, doing gratitude and everything like that. Although it sounded like it wasn't quite enough. Um, what, I remember the first time I was introduced to Oasis, and it was so interesting because I was making a meal. I was meal prepped. I do it every week, same meal. It's great. If you like mac and cheese, I'm your guy. But baked mac and cheese, I should say. I don't want to elevate myself too much, but um, I feel similarly where it's like you kind of see the trajectory, and even as even as you might not be at work, it still might be on your mind, right? And you realize it's like, okay, it's really starting to bleed into the rest of my life, and I can't quite escape whatever misery might, continue to propagate from that. I remember the moment uh, I came across an ad for Oasis, and I was listening to some success mindset on YouTube, and I heard Andrew's voice, and there was something about his voice that really kind of put me at ease. It was not like your typical salesman, and the listeners of this podcast, if they haven't already, they'll probably hear from Andrew James here, soon. Um, but I remember it was like a breath of fresh air for me, and I know myself and our listeners would love to hear about your experience, the moment when you really kind of discovered Oasis, when Oasis came across your path, and how that really started to kind of change your reality as soon as you uh, not only made that discovery, but really saw the possibility. Can you kind of describe that experience of discovery?
Yeah. So no, I like a lot of people was really nervous when looking into the whole online thing. Like, you really don't know who to trust. And that's totally fine. By the way, can I totally be myself on this podcast? Because
Absolutely.
okay, like, in full disclosure, like, I sometimes have a sailor's mouth, but I'm trying to not do that. So it's cool.
You,
It's cool.
yes, be yourself, girl.
Okay.
This,
Okay.
this is
Okay.
this is a podcast all about personal freedom. So
Okay.
if you feel like that helps you be free, you do you.
Okay. So a lot of people are just fucking scared. And that's okay. Like, if our ancestors didn't feel fear, they would have gotten eaten by saber-toothed tigers, right? Like, it's just natural. It's fine to feel fear. But I went for it. Like, I was like, okay, like, I'm not gonna let fear take the driver's seat of my life. I'm gonna put it in the passenger seat and just keep on driving. So I decided, I was like, okay, so this seems kind of sketch, but I'm just gonna check it out. I'm just gonna see. And the fact that I could schedule a call was like the first thing. What Andrew James as well, like his voice and like how real he was. Like, it didn't feel like he was trying to just push something on me. It felt like he just wanted to be a genuine human being and help. And so I was like, okay, so like, I'll schedule a call. And like I said, the fact that I got to schedule a call was made me feel better. Like they weren't just, asking for my information or anything. And they like spoke to me, gave me a strategy, and then just made me feel really comfortable about everything. I didn't feel pressured, anything like that. And yeah, I just I decided to just jump for it because I just had my intuition told me, and Andrew's energy told me that I should just go for it, just jump off of that cliff, like I said earlier. So here I am.
That's awesome. Yeah, so it's so funny. It's like everybody that I talk to, it's like there's just something about Andrew that is so charismatic and it inspires confidence. And it's really interesting. It's like isn't it interesting that like when we're at a point where we don't feel the confidence that we have in our life, whether it's like in my case, feeling like the total dissatisfaction of where I was headed in life, basically also working a dead end job, doing something that I could express myself in, but I knew looking back it wouldn't be satisfying enough. Isn't it amazing that it's like when somebody actually doesn't care about making a sale but actually just improving your life, there's something magical about that, isn't there?
Mhm.
That would, can you also kind of describe, because you described wonderfully, like not only just kind of like some of the process to be able to just be introduced to this opportunity. Can you share a little bit about what that journey actually started to look like once you kind of, bought in, so to speak, and started applying yourself?
So yeah, I mean, what that journey looked like was finding a family. Like I had no, like I said, I was a hairstylist before. I didn't have any experience working online. Like I didn't know what I was doing. And I was really nervous. I was like, am I gonna be able to fucking do this? Like and I don't know how to market. Like, I don't know how to do any of this, but I knew that, my main motivator was that I wanted that freedom, right? Just like, so many others. So I was like, well, I mean, I'm not going to be able to achieve it if I don't try. And so, anyways, like I got into the community and I saw how helpful everyone was. I saw how engaged Andrew was. I saw that, oh, I had coaching calls. I saw that I had the ability to really just reach out to anyone anytime that I needed help. And the education in itself was really in depth and like A to Z, like total beginner to total expert by the end. So I really felt great about learning everything and being able to process. Like I didn't feel lost at all. And then back to kind of what I was referring to before about surrounding myself with, the right kind of people, like this really played a part in that. Like, again, you're the average sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So what they say is you should start to surround yourself with the people that you want to be like. So if there's, a millionaire that you like, for instance, and you want to be like him, like surround yourself with him. And so when I started to be more engaged with like the community and with Andrew, I really started to see how positive and how inspiring and how helpful everyone was. And I was like, okay, like these are the people that I need to keep being with. And so, yeah, I mean, I hope that that answers your question. I kind of like trailed off there for a minute, but my brain is like a goldfish sometimes. So,
That answers the question wonderfully. And yeah, it's really interesting. Every person I talk to consistently, they say it was the community, it was the people. That, I mean, it was like I might have showed up for the money, but I stayed for the people. And
mhm.
yeah, I totally agree. Where it's like, having the opportunity really, to explore and then learn at your own pace, go, like you mentioned, from A to Z, beginner to expert, but also just be able to have people you can lean on. Like, that just felt phenomenal. And especially, for me, I was like, okay, relationships, it was kind of a tertiary. It was kind of a nice to have. But the more I really like spend more time in the group and invest in my business and find people like yourself that I can connect with, the more I really start to treasure how special this community really is. because just like you mentioned, you're surrounding yourself with the people you want to be like. Blair, if I can be totally honest, I want to be more like you. I don't want to necessarily be working 45, hours a week in a hot machine shop, you know, basically working for money, violating the first law of wealth, don't work for money, and instead be able to travel the world and build incredible relationships with people who actually are in life where you want to be. Um, can you describe a little bit of your life now? Like a couple months ago, you mentioned that you wanted to go to Mexico, and now you're calling me from Mexico. You started in North Carolina. How did you end up like traveling, partway across the globe to stay in Mexico for going on what, over a month now? And
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Can you describe the life you're living now and just give us a picture of what it looks like a day in the life of Blair?
Well, I mean, I I just I don't know. Like life has definitely made a 180. Like I have met so many amazing people, and in turn, like, like surrounding myself with more people that I want to be like I've met a lot of those people. And it's just crazy, like coming from an environment where the mindset was like, you go, especially in North Carolina, like you go work on a farm and like work 9 to 5, and that's all you're supposed to do for the rest of your entire life. And now coming to Mexico, I'm like, it's a culture shock for sure. It was at first. And like life now is just unreal. It's amazing. Like it's amazing to get to see and experience the things that I never would have gotten to experience if it wasn't for Oasis, if it wasn't for the access to the tools that I needed to gain that freedom. And I'm not gonna lie, it's not easy. Like it's never going to be easy, and I don't want anyone to think that it's going to be easy. It's not, something where you're going to get rich quick, but it is something that if you really put your all into it and really stay consistent and dedicate yourself, you're going to get results. But most people aren't willing to do that at all. So anyways, I just have done my best to stay consistent and do what I need to do in order to get the results that I wanted. And here I am in Mexico. I It took a lot of me to come here too. Like I was kind of, well, I wanted to get out of my comfort zone, and that's why I did it. But it was hard to jump off of that cliff. It was hard for me to be like, especially everyone around me was like, "You're crazy. You're traveling alone. Like, what are you good? What are you doing? You're gonna get kidnapped." Da da da. And I'm like, no, like I need to do this. I have the freedom to do this now. Like, why not? And so I come to Mexico. Like I do work, but I hang out on the beach. I have gone and seen places like I went and saw Chichen Itza, the Mayan pyramids. I went to Cozumel and snorkeled, which apparently has some of the best snorkeling on this side of the planet. And I done just had so many different experiences, which in turn have enriched my life and enriched my mindset. And I mean, just really helped me grow and open my mind even more.
Oh, that sounds so cool. And wow, yeah, and it's so funny that you mentioned like get out of your comfort zone. And it sounded like even just going to Mexico from North Carolina and just getting that change of environment was a leap of faith. And just being able to see a little bit of your story plus the posts that you've shared on your personal Facebook page. um, I mean, these people, all of these wonderful listeners, they can find you on that Facebook page and see for themselves how absolutely extraordinary your experiences are. Guys, don't tell Blair, but she is way understating all this. She lives a dream lifestyle. If you didn't know any better, you would think she is a millionaire. And here's what's cool: you don't have to be a millionaire to live a millionaire lifestyle. I mean, you guys just heard that Blair is literally, she's in Mexico. She's been there for 6 weeks. She's still earning, making money. Now, Blair, real quick, can you share a little secret? How many hours a day do you actually work towards your business? People here are looking for lifestyle freedom, and they want to know that they have the time and the resources to be able to dedicate something that can buy back their life. How much can you share a little bit? How much time are you actually putting in to your business on like a day-to-day basis?
Day-to-day basis, well, it really depends on what I have going on, right? It is about that freedom. So there are days where I take off and I don't work. But if I had to maybe put an average number on it, I would say maybe 4 hours or so, maybe five sometimes. It really it just depends. But it's all going to come down to the amount of time that that you want to put into your business, and how the kind of results that you want to see. Because as I said before, it's not something that's easy, but it is something, if you push yourself and you really do everything that you can to succeed, then you'll see those results. So
Wow.
about four hours, yeah, is what I do.
Wow. Well, 4 hours. I mean, again, to keep things in perspective, most people I know, and growing up in a largely employee-based family, I watched my parents, all my parents, they separated and then they each got remarried. So I saw four parents get up in the morning, go to a job, work for at least 8, but primarily spend upwards of 9, 10 hours a day just in work-related activities to be able to afford a roof over their heads, pay their bills, and go back and do it again tomorrow. Are you literally telling us that you live a tremendous lifestyle, personal freedom on an average 4 hours a day, when most people, they work so hard to keep themselves in prison for 8 or 9 hours a day? Are you serious? I mean, I kind of say this in jest, because I think people think that you need to work super hard all the time to be able to afford your freedom. Now, you put in, a certain amount of work before this, and but it doesn't seem like it was a forever deal. It was kind of like, once you got the systems in place, it was really much more automated, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you could give anybody listening to this call like a piece of advice to encourage them to also take that leap of faith, and really just kind of help clear the misconception that this is going to be another job, can you help our listeners really like feel encouraged that they too can make this work for themselves?
Well, I mean, the important thing to remember is what you're after here is lifestyle freedom. You're not getting a job. And with that being said, like, being an entrepreneur and being on this journey, it's not easy, but you have the freedom to be able to control your schedule, to be able to say, like, I don't want to work today, because you've got enough income that's coming in on the days that you have worked, or from that passive income, from that system that you have set up in place, to not have to do that.
That is awesome. Yeah, and I love that clarity where it's like you're creating a lifestyle business, you're creating lifestyle freedom. And I love how you mentioned where it's like you can really just kind of set your own schedule. Now, one of the misconceptions that I hear from people who are amateur podcasters, kind of like myself, where it's like time freedom. They would describe time freedom as the ability to do nothing. How would you describe time freedom, knowing now what it actually takes and what it actually looks like to be able to to kind of live the life of your dreams?
Mm-hmm. So I would use the term a little more like time flexibility. It's definitely not something where you, until you've got, all the systems that are set up in place, it's definitely not something that you can just like sit back and do nothing, because it's a business, right? But you do have the ability to set your schedule and do as you see fit. So yeah, I hope that was the answer you're looking for.
Definitely. Well, and I want to bring that up because I think the misconception being time freedom, or like as you described very aptly, time flexibility, where it's like, it is a business at the end of the day, and it's your business, and it's really kind of shifting, where the control is, because oftentimes, like as an employee, like my schedule day to day is dictated by someone else who says you have this work that needs done by this day, and I'm giving you this window of time to complete that, right? But when it's a business of your own, and you really start to become more accountable to your own calendar, which is rooted from your own goals and ambitions, you can really begin to craft what your day actually looks like. Now, I want to get back into kind of like the lifestyle freedom, because you mentioned earlier that you visited like Machu Picchu, you went snorkeling. After you get done with this this tremendous amount of 4 hours of work, I'm just kidding, guys. Don't take me so seriously. I'm still working on that too. But after you get done with this 4 hours of, if that, you said even like every other day, whatever, set your schedule. After you get done with work, what does your day look like? Are you in some like cute little Mexican, cafe just sitting across the beach, and you like watch all these people go across the sand and boogie boards and stuff like that? Because I think the easier it is for these listeners, these wonderful listeners, to be able to imagine it for themselves, I think the sooner they'll get there.
So yeah, after I get done with work, it's typically hanging out by the pool, or walking down the streets in Mexico, checking out the shops, uh, going to like the island. Like when I was in Playa del Carmen, because I've kind of been hopping around Mexico, I haven't really stayed in one place. When I was in Playa del Carmen, I would take the ferry over to Cozumel, which is like only like a 40-minute ride, and like go hang out on the beach there, watch the people walk by, like, and one thing too about being in Mexico is walking by and watching the other people still working, like walking by and seeing them, like especially here, it's pretty hard labor, right? Like they're doing construction and things like that, and I'm like, wow, like I'm so glad that that's not me. Like, actually have the freedom to be able to go to the bar and get a drink if I want to, or go to the club downtown and hang out, or, whatever, just live life, just meet people, just have experiences that I want to have, that I feel are important to have. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Hanging out by the pool, hanging out by the beach, exploring, just doing whatever I feel like doing that day.
That is awesome. Now, as you got started, like, in this business, and you started to imagine like what goals you might have, or what that kind of journey would look like once you started finding, success, where was the idea of sitting by the pool, or going to the club, or taking a ferry to Cozumel, was that ever something that you imagined as you got started, and now starting to realize?
No, I mean, not those specific ideas. I definitely imagine myself like getting out and traveling and meeting people and doing the naturey things that I like to do, and kayaking and, things like that. Also, one thing that I learned to do was to dance. So definitely imagine myself like dancing in all these like cool traveling locations. But I didn't imagine myself like specifically like going to the ferry on Cozumel, or like being on the beach in Mexico. Honestly, Mexico, was kind of an idea that transformed as I was going through the process. Because I think your goals change as a human, they never stay quite the same. But I think the key is to have the freedom to be able to change those goals, have the freedom to be able to think about like what you want to do next. So like at that point in life, it starts to become, and Andrew even says this, a little more like a video game where you just wake up and you're like, I decide what I want to play today. And so, yeah, I mean, Mexico in specific was not something I ever thought of, but I'm definitely glad that I have the freedom to be able to do that now. And speaking of like dancing, I'm really big into music festivals, like electronic music festivals. And so the rest of this year I have one like every single month if they happen. We'll see with COVID. But I have one every single month. And so I think now that I've been in Mexico and I just love Mexico so much and I've made so many friends, I think I'm just gonna come like back and forth from Mexico to these festivals in the States. And yeah, that's what my goal has gone into, just music festivals and Mexico for the
awesome.
rest of the year. And I think Bali
Awesome.
at the end of the year, but we'll see. We'll see.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. And I love how you clarified that, where it's like it's not just a the pursuit of goals. It's really being able to realize like the freedom of choice. And it sounds like in this case, the freedom to choose, okay, I want to get out of my comfort zone. I want to be able to experience more. I'm not tied down to any one, place or even any one goal. But this is where I feel like I want to explore. This is where I feel like I want to have those new experiences. And especially when you say it's like, well, I have an EDM concert, an electronic music festival concert every month, and I have the freedom to be able to, come back to Mexico, and to me, that sounds like a totally different girl and a totally different life than who you were even a year ago. And for that, I am happy for you. And I'm so glad that you have been sharing these experiences with people in Elevate, people in Oasis, and sharing it on your personal page. Because I mean, if you've already made it this far in a year, imagine what you're going to be doing next year. Doesn't that blow your mind? Oh my gosh. Well, I want to throw this in there because you mentioned it, dancing and music. I'm just going to give a shameless plug here. Listeners, if you've made it this far, you're something special. And if you want to be even more special, here's what you need to do next. After this podcast ends, you need to go immediately to Blair's Facebook page and check out her shuffling videos because
Well, the Instagram
girls
is
on
more.
fire. Instagram, I've stand
Yeah.
corrected. So right after this podcast, you're gonna go to Instagram and see Blair's shuffling videos because the girl's on fire, and you literally get to see the transformation, how she begins to express herself and realize like her own charisma in these awesome dances. Now, Blair, real quick, before we get to the last few questions, can you tell us how did you discover that you liked shuffling, and what did the journey look like to where you are today?
Well, I had always seen it before, like I started going through this transitional point in my life, but I never, I don't know, I never had the time to learn. Like I knew it was something that I wanted, but I didn't really have the tools. I didn't really have the freedom from my job. And when COVID happened, a lot of people needed like that outlet to relieve some stress. And I was again going through that whole transitional point. And so I just found a coach on Instagram, and actually I've connected with her. She's like my best friend now. And that's how I started to learn. And I mean, I would like, at the time I was like so stressed out. I would go outside for like 3 hours at a time. I lost so much weight. Went outside for like 3 hours at a time in the heat and like just dancing and shuffling and practicing. And in turn, like it started to my journey into Elevate and in my journey into Mexico, and everything kind of jumbled together and snowballed. but I ended up just going with it and meeting new people because of it. And yeah, I mean, it was definitely a big part. And I think if I also hadn't have started, with Oasis, that I wouldn't have pursued it because work went back. Like my salon opened back up whenever things started to normalize in the States. And so I lost my time again. And then, I found the whole Oasis thing and I was like, okay, so I have the freedom to be able to do this and learn. And yeah, I mean, it's been a very, very fun journey.
Yeah, sounds like it. I mean, and to be able to find something where it's like you could just go out there and practice. It sounds like 3 hours in the heat. You got to be passionate about that. Dancing 3 hours in the heat, and this is North Carolina heat, so it's humid too, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
try Mexico. Since I've been here, I've been like dying. I went to Tulum one night and I was dancing with. Tulum has all of like the house vibes and techno vibes, and so I'm like down there dancing and like sweat, like pouring sweat. And I'm like, I don't even care. This is amazing. I'm looking at the stars and the palm trees and like all these people are around me and I'm dancing and I'm here in Mexico. I'm like, I can't believe I'm here. That was me in Tulum like 2 weeks ago.
Wow, that is awesome. That is awesome. Well, I'm so glad that like you're getting those experiences now, and yeah, I mean, just being able to sit here and chat with you over Zoom, um, I mean, I could just see how your eyes light up, and I mean, how you just come to life when you start talking about your passions and being able to realize those now. That's really the whole root of this. I mean, being able to achieve lifestyle freedom. Um, Blair, before we wrap up here, um, was there any like questions you think I should have asked, or like any projects that you're working on now that you feel like listeners should know about, especially if they want to stay connected with you?
Can you like repeat that, because for a minute you froze on my screen and so I missed a chunk of what you said. I'm sorry.
That's fine. We can hashtag let it go. We'll get back to it. So sorry, I had to take that frozen moment. That's so good. On a throwback. Oh yeah. So before we wrap up the podcast here, are there any like cool projects that you're working on, or anything else that you feel like for the people who want to stay connected to you and find out more about you, anything that you're doing now that they should know about that might just like totally light them up?
Well, I mean, one thing I'm working on at the moment is a vlog of my whole trip to Mexico, my whole experience of the last, like, well, I think I'm gonna have to break it up into two parts because it's just so much content. But I think it's gonna be like 3 weeks and 3 weeks on YouTube on my channel. And then I'm trying to think of what else I'm working on. I am also currently working on trying to figure out how I want to become a dance coach for shuffling. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet, so I don't know when that's going to come into play, but everyone can like keep an eye on my page. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm working on at the moment, mostly is the whole YouTube thing.
Awesome. Awesome. So you're building what sounds going to be like a two-part vlog, and you're learning how to become a dance coach, really how you're going to kind of get that next ball rolling. So that is awesome. Blair, before I ask you the final question, where can all these wonderful listeners find you if they want to follow you and continue to grow with you?
So you can go to my YouTube, which is Blair Outside. You can also, are you going to link these below?
You bet.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay. So you can go to my YouTube, or you can go to my Instagram or my Facebook. And of course, I will put the YouTube on Instagram and Facebook as soon as I've finished it, and everyone can connect there, and feel free to like reach out as well and ask me questions. Like, don't be shy. I don't bite, only sometimes. Um, but yeah, before we end the call, I would like to speak a little bit on getting out of your comfort zone, if that's okay.
Absolutely. You go for it.
Okay. So another reason that I came to Mexico was when I was a kid, I was very shy. I was always made fun of. Nobody really liked me. I was the kid that nobody wanted to play with at recess. And so, because of that, throughout my adult life, I really was scared to talk to people. I was scared to be the first one to approach a group of people. And so that's why when my past that I told you about a year ago, got involved in the partying and, all of that, I felt a comfort in that at first when that was my lifestyle, because those people hung around me because I drink too, which totally isn't the right, reason to have to hang out with people. But I finally found friends, and so I hung out with them. And when I went through this whole transitional point of starting to do things that were going to push me out of my comfort zone, I realized I needed to travel by myself. I'm like, this is going to be super uncomfortable, like, especially being somewhere where I know nobody. Like, how am I going to fucking walk up to people and talk to people? And I don't know. I just got the guts to book a flight. I had the freedom to be able to do so, to just book a one-way flight. And I'm like, well, why not? I mean, I'm not getting any younger. I should just, get out of my comfort zone. And, that's was like step, 6 in the journey, along with jumping into Elevate. And I just kept, doing all these things, getting it. And once you get out of your comfort zone, once you're like, okay, like, I can jump a little bit further. I can jump a little bit further. I can accomplish this. I can accomplish that. And in turn, it's going to play a pretty big part in the trajectory of your life and the people that you meet and the attitude that you have and your mindset in everything. So I think having that freedom to be able to decide what you want to do and not just stay in the same 4 walls every day, working the same job and talking to the same people. Like, I feel like having the opportunity to get out of that is super important.
Awesome. And I totally agree. Very cool. Well, Blair, we'll wrap up the podcast pretty quick, and we can stay and chit chat afterwards. But the last question, if you could say anything to the course creators like Andrew and Jake from Rise, and all the other wonderful course creators who have helped really just have an impact in your life, what would you tell those guys?
I would tell them that they are wonderful, amazing people who are doing so much good in the world. Like, it is hard these days to find people who are ethical, who are really doing things for the right reason, and who are also really just so passionate and willing to help others. And the courses that these coaches have created and the support that they've created, the communities that have been formed because of these things are next level. These things are like transformational to people's lives, like health, wealth, self-development, relationships, like all of that. There's going to be something on the Oasis platform that is going to help market or help you're going to be able to market to anyone, and actually be able to help that person in a very genuine sense. And I definitely love every single coach that we have on our platform, and I aspire to be just like them, which is one of the reasons, again, like, trying to think about how I want to become like a dance coach and also combine it with mindset too. I didn't say that part, but those you coaches have played a part in my transformation, especially Andrew and Jake. Like, Andrew and Jake are the men the mans. Like, I would not be here if it was not for them, and especially Jake. Jake is awesome. So, yeah.
Cool. Very cool. Well, I hope they get the chance to hear that from you because, oh my gosh. Yes, they are literally they have helped create Oasis and Rise, and they are making waves around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Pillars of Freedom podcast, here to help you achieve your lifestyle freedom of having control of your time, income, and location. This has been Blair Williams. I'll include all of her links in the show notes. Thank you, Blair, for joining us tonight. We're going to go and end the recording, chit chat, and to all of you wonderful listeners, we'll see you next time.